I can see the questions. Who want to quarterback? You want me to quarterback it? Yeah. Rob, you quarterback it?
Yeah, I got it.
All right.
All right, there we are.
Are we on?
Give it a second, let people chime in.
Yep. Make sure I add it to y'all timelines too. I'm doing that right now.
Yeah.
Hasn't added to the timeline just yet.
All right.
All right, y'all ready?
You ready to go?
Let's
All
go.
right, let's do it.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody. We appreciate you hopping on this evening. Another episode from our ManUp Series. We got a special guest in the house with us tonight. I'm Rob, Brandon, Clarence. We got our other partner who he's been handling some things. Chris Mitchell with us. So we all wanted to, again, come together again and have some conversation about another topic that's been going on for some weeks here, we know, but it's actually been going on for much, much longer than that. So we are here to talk about stuff like that. Our special guest we have with us is Mr. James Joyce from Coffee with a Black Guy. I'm going to let him go into, what Coffee with a Black Guy stands for, but this gentleman, we went to college together, Ohio University, Bobcats represent. He's also my fraternity brother, A5, so much love there. But most important, he's a great friend and a great brother that I love dearly, and really appreciate him for the work that he's doing out in his communities and the work that he's doing to help make a difference in the world today. So without further ado, I'm gonna let him introduce himself, and then we're gonna get into some questions and some conversation.
Sounds good. I appreciate that, Rob. Yeah, we do go back. The first experience I had with Rob was during, must have been the end of my freshman year in college when I was, what do they call that, voluntold to run for the homecoming court. And Rob and I were on the court and did a lot of the fundraising activities and things together. And ever since then, Rob has been a true friend and brother in every sense of the word. So a pleasure having me here with you and your business partners to have a little conversation about the issues that we need to have conversations about. Issues that we've needed to have conversations about for a very long time. But it just seems that just here in the past 2 weeks, or to be more specific, the past 17 days, the rest of the nation decides that they now want to have these conversations too. And I welcome them to that conversation. Coffee with the Black Guy, what that is, the initiative of Coffee with the Black Guy is essentially what it sounds like. It's Black Guy office hours. What I recognized around the time and just before around the time, from Trayvon Martin all the way up to Philando Castile and Alton Sterling in 2016, I remember people just kind of going around and these issues of Black men being gunned down and whatnot being part of the national conversation. And, folks around me who do not look like me were just kind of aimlessly walking around about avoiding eye contact and not really talking about the issues that need to be talked about. And so I basically just opened up Black Guy office hours, said I'd be at a certain coffee shop at a certain hour. And, things have kind of been going from there. Here in Santa Barbara, which is kind of a South Central California coast, we have a very liberal and progressive community, right? And this swath is what do you call blue territory, more or less. But the conversations weren't happening. People weren't really talking about the real issues. People were, what do you call that, respectability politics. They were engaging in respectability politics and, color blindness and everything is great. And I felt it was my duty to help set the record straight and point out that color blindness is indeed not a good thing. That color blindness is in fact a detriment and part of the problem um, that we're facing right now. And so, in addition to that, a quick little how I got to Coffee with the Black Guy. Originally from Maryland, so born and raised just outside of the Baltimore area, and went to school, of course, at Ohio University. There we go. Represent real quick. Went to Ohio University, had was very involved on campus, ran track there, was a president of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, as well as RA and various other activities on campus. And that has kind of been my theme since college, is just overactivity and involvement in the community. First as a journalist and newspaper reporter in various places in the country, around the country, Marion, Indiana, being the first. Marion, Indiana, if you look that place up, it's known for the last lynching in the North. And so when I was there, we did a series about, one of the reporters, she did a series about James Cameron, who was a survivor of that lynching in the town of Marion, where it happened in the town square, where the building and the stump to the tree still stood. And so, that was my foray into the professional career as a journalist and covering a variety of issues for the newspaper out in central, really the smack dab in the middle of Indiana. Went from there to Pacific Northwest, so central Washington, out in Yakima, Washington. Was out there for a little bit more than 4 years, also covering some things, doing education reporting mostly. And then I did a quick stint in Toledo, Ohio. Was at the Toledo Blade for several months right before the '08 election. And got a chance to cover Obama's multiple stints in town at that time. Was on the campaign trail with Sarah Palin. Just had a lot of good experiences as a reporter. Then got laid off, came out to California. One thing led to another. Somehow I ended up in politics, working for some guy who was running for state assembly, but he was a city councilman in Santa Barbara. At the time, I was living in Oxnard. And if you all don't know about Oxnard, I would encourage you to look it up. It's got a lot of good hip hop artists come from there. Anderson .Paak is a Oxnard native, as well as Madlib. If you know about the hip hop producer Madlib, and or in his alter ego Quasimodo as an artist himself. And so he is also an Oxnard native, in addition to several other folks. And so I did a stint of 4 years or so in Oxnard and working for this city councilman turned assembly member in California. His name is Das Williams. He was a grassroots community organizer. Learned a lot of things from him using Dolores Huerta model of organizing. Dolores Huerta, who's an organizer with Cesar Chavez back during the grape strikes. And so, just kind of being in the richness in the area of grassroots organizing and seeing all of that energy around me. Once I worked for this assembly member, the lady I work for now, she is a state senator. She had served in the Senate, in the assembly, got elected to the Senate. When she got elected, reached out to me to work for her as her deputy district director initially, and then her district director for the past 5 or so years. And so as part of that, got a chance to move from Oxnard to Santa Barbara. It's been a great move, and started Coffee with the Black Guy 4 years ago as just a way to convene community conversations, facilitate a conversation that should be happening anyway. And as I mentioned, first session, I had 7 people, right? 7 people looking to engage in conversations about race on just a random day that I selected. Last year, my first one was in February, and had 107 officially people at that one as we took count. And so scaling up in that time and getting folks to really focus on some of these issues around race, privilege, diversity, inclusion, all of that stuff, and really, look at it from an unapologetically Black perspective, understanding the greatness that we have and greatness that we have to share, a lot of the benefits in things like knowing, being able to succeed as a Black man in America, you're gonna have to learn how to code switch, right? And so understanding that that's a higher intelligence and really getting folks to look at those skill sets as positives instead of hindrances. So it's been great. More recently, over the past couple weeks, it's been even actually over the past few months, it's been great to expand the reach of the conversation to more folks, and of course, taking advantage of the digital format on during COVID-19.
Awesome. Again, thank you. A lot of things as we get into our passions, we've always been doing them from even when we were younger. And I remember James on our campus doing the same things, bettering relations, between fraternities and sororities, black and white fraternities and sororities. So, this is awesome that you're doing this work. So let's get into some conversation around what would you say right now? What's the demographic of the people that you interact with? Majority.
So a little bit of anything and everything, quite frankly. Of course, there's a lot of white folks come into the consciousness of, okay, something's not right here over the past few years, and wanting to learn more about the perspective, wanting to learn more about how we view the world and how some of the interactions and experiences that we have. But it kind of runs the gamut, right? We have a lot of, particularly when hosting in Santa Barbara, and even when I would host the session in Oxnard, a lot of Black folks come out to find out either curiosity of, I thought I was the only Black guy having coffee. Who is this Black guy that is having coffee with people? It definitely had some folks show up for that, but then also just wanting to, it's a safe space to share your story and you can be heard. And some of the feedback that I've heard from particularly Black folks has been the most rewarding, because it's an opportunity for the community to see us who we are and not as who we have to be when we're in their world, right? And so it really allows us to lean into what this excellence and Blackness is and share it with the world in a very real and authentic way. But in a way that's somewhat controlled, and then also we've had high school students all the way up to mid to late 80s, right? Folks in wherever, retirees. We've had folks hosting in Santa Barbara. That's about a 2-hour drive from LA. We've had folks travel from LA specifically to attend these sessions in Santa Barbara, as well as had people from the northern part of the county also travel equally. And so understanding that there was something here about Coffee with a Black Guy, and really built a solid team around me. It's kind of like yourself there, Rob, making sure that guys I grew up with, have had experiences with, really brought into this business. And it is a business, it's an LLC, of being able to facilitate community conversations, and whether that be for nonprofits that are doing it in the community, it can be companies who are doing it for their employees, it can be nonprofit boards who are looking to have that conversation internally before they can even have that conversation externally, and anything and everything in between. I don't profess to know everything. I don't profess to have any or all answers, but it's just a perspective. And having been a scribe of observation and research over the past first 10 years of my career as a journalist, that's given me a specific, unique lens on our experience, and being able to kind of I guess translate that for the layman.
Right. Great. Awesome. So let's now get into some conversation where I want to hear from.
Yeah, because I got a question. I got a question. I mean, it's.
Oh yeah, I got questions.
Yeah,
so,
I got a question.
I got a hot one I want to get out before we get.
Okay. All right, let's do it.
So, and this has been bugging me. So we know that this conversation brings discomfort, right? Especially in the spaces that we have the opportunity to really have conversations with people that don't look like us right now. Say white people, whoever else. How do we continue to bring our authentic selves today before it was said, and I would like probably Chris to go, because Chris is also in the I&D space. So
Okay, nice.
how do we bring our authentic selves to that conversation? Understanding the discomfort it brings, right? But should we even care about that discomfort now? Does that discomfort hold the same value as it used to?
Right.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because at the end of the day, sometimes conversations are but necessary. In order for us to grow, thrive, and develop, we got to have those
Oh, you got you.
position where
There you go.
we have everyone's undivided attention. Where COVID-19 is here, people can't go to work, they can't go to the movies, they can't do there's no sports venues. It's in their faces, it's all they see. And so sometimes what's uncomfortable has to be necessary. And so I always say this: you can have good seed and good soil, but if the climate is not right, there'll never be germination of the seed. You can have good seed, good soil, and good climate, but you can never grow oranges out here in Toledo, Ohio. So the climate is everything. Without the heart and the mind, sometimes you can have wasted conversation with people that are not ready to be on that level with that type of dialogue. And so sometimes, me being the DEI guy in that space, you're tired of having conversations at work about it, and then you have to come home and have that same conversation about it, where you're like, I'm tired. My thing to that, Rob, is that sometimes it's hard to have a conversation with a individual that should already know the lesson. What do I mean by that? I'm glad you asked the question. Well, what do I mean by that? That is just as simple as this: is that a person that's 60 and up, if they don't have it by now, they're not going to have it for the most part, especially when people are disconnected, they feel like there's no connection. That conversation for me is a waste. Case in point, real quick, I give illustration for application. And what do I mean by that? It was a lady that walked past my house. My wife and I just built a house. Caucasian lady walked past the house, and she's power walking, and there's an easement in my backyard. And she said to me, is there a slope in the backyard? I says, no, there's an easement. I can show you. Her response, and I was washing my wife's car in the front driveway. Her response to me was, no one's home. And I said, wow.
Wow.
And I said, well, ma'am, I can show you in the backyard. She says, no one's home. I said, well, ma'am, I'm the owner of the house. She looked me up and down, man, and said, I thought because you had a bucket in your hand, you were the worker. Now, this woman had to be in her 60s, and she looked me up and down and says, what do you do? I said, well, I work. I ain't gonna say what university I was working at the time, but she looked me up and down and said, I didn't see that coming. I looked her up and down and said, ma'am, what is it that you do? She said, I'm a retired math teacher. Retired. I said, yeah, you probably shouldn't teach anybody anything anymore. And she said, I didn't mean to offend. I said, but you did. And I said, and my dad always taught me, ignorance don't deserve a response, but for you, I'm making an exception. I said, it's very hard to teach somebody a lesson so hard to teach somebody that should already know the lesson. You've been in curriculum and doing all this for 30 years. And so, Rob, to get back to your conversation about, having that uncomfortable conversation, it is our job, our duty as a Black man, with or without a tie, with or without education, to have a conversation that's authentic, real, and transparent. I don't care how much it hurts. They say, I ain't gonna go to church on you, but they say, the pastor preacher said, if I'm stepping on your toes, say ouch, but let's move on. And so this conversation has to be had from Clarence, from Brandon, from you, James, and from you, Rob. We have to have this authentic, transparent conversation. And there's no better time to have that conversation than right now, where we have the entire, not America, but the entire globe's undivided attention. And so you have to be a champion. You have to speak up, because I always say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And you want to make sure that you're at the table with a voice. And so very, very important and comfortable, but necessary.
Definitely.
Awesome. Great stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's, I mean, exactly how I explain it. Like that whole idea of the, that you started with as far as the seed and then the flower. I use that same analogy, but pointing out the fact that to get to that beautiful flower, you've got to go through some friction and some areas of uncomfortability. That seed is going to have a crack, and that's a frictionless act. Then through the soil, then all of that stuff for the leaves as they're coming up. But then, you get to the point where it's a flower, but that's not until the end of all that friction, right? And so that's some things that you have to kind of lean into. I do admit that for me, it was a lot of being in a position, a very public position, working, as a representative and leader, management leader for a state senator in the area. Like I'm in a lot of spaces where I'm the only one, and I'm unapologetically who I am, unmistakably Black. And so I just decided to kind of lean into that a little bit more. Some tips that help that I kind of lay as ground rules in kind of having these conversations, and not quite the ages that Chris is, but some issues of like be respectful, be genuine, be willing to listen, be willing to feel something, because when you're in that space and you're talking about people's reality and people are sharing their truth, you've got to be able to feel something to be moved to action, right? And then don't seek to dominate with your story. We have a lot of folks who are there and just wanting to be respectful of different time limits and things of that nature, and so wanting to make sure that we're speaking compact and really getting the issue across. But to counter the issue of folks over a certain age, they should know things at a certain time. They should, absolutely. But quite frequently, I know that previous generations of our ancestors didn't take the time to educate. There was a fear factor, and there was this generational trauma that we've carried with us for generations. They were in a different place of that trauma at that time, and so those conversations.
James, would you say they're stuck in their ways at that point? Then, if they've been taught something and there's never been a paradigm shift, would you say that they're stuck in their ways for the most part?
No, I've seen a lot of particularly retired folks come in and engage in these conversations because they're curious, because no one has had these conversations with them. And the greatest example I have of that is a local retired Superior Court judge who is in his 80s now. And we've had a relationship for, going out to coffee, sitting down, having, lunch occasionally over the past several years, but always sharing these authentic stories. And he shares stories about, his first experience with race and sharing a room during an athletic camp with a Black student, and then having that Black athlete crying himself to sleep at night. Wow. And then this retired judge now at the time asking, okay, so tell me a little bit more about this, and really asking about, why are you crying yourself to sleep? And it's because of the pressure and the weight of being Black. I mean, that is a real and true story of feeling that pain and anguish on a regular, if not daily base. And what I'm trying to do with Coffee with the Black Guy, not just for me, but for our whole, is to kind of scale that up and turn that pain into gain, right? And I stole that phrase from my brother Adam Harris in Detroit, who does work with youth and similar stuff. But it's an issue of really looking at that pain that we've experienced as Black men or Black folks in America, and sharing that experience to those who are willing to listen. You're absolutely right. You can't have rotten soil and plant that seed and expect to get to that flower. You need to have all the right ingredients, and we definitely have a lot of those right ingredients right now. But right now, I think a lot of folks who are just coming into their arc of racial understanding don't know how to have they don't have the skill set to have these conversations, because race has never been an issue for them, right? And that's where I feel as if we had that experience, and those of us who are willing can share that, and because we have the blueprint. We know how we were raised, and we know how the struggles and the pains that we went through in coming into our identity, and being able to sit on a platform like this and unapologetically say we are Black men who are sharing our truth with you in a way that you should receive it, in a way that is respectful, but in a way that is not always comfortable, right? I'm going to be real and raw about it every time I'm coming. And so it's not about, touchy feelies and things of that nature. That's not what this is about, and it's never been. And so just kind of getting over that fallacy and just go ahead and leaning into those conversations is, I think, key.
Real quick, and I know you want to say something, Brandon and Rob, I know you do as well, but my man here, Stephen Williams, that's watching, he's chiming in. He said something that was very heavy. He said, discomfort is not ours to own. It's their discomfort. But we can be uncomfortable, though. It's not ours to own it. And so just because it's an uncomfortable conversation,
good point,
it's not wrapped around us. So Stephen, man, we appreciate you chiming in with that. That's a lot of weight. We appreciate that.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's dope.
Definitely. And then too, I was going to even chime in too. You guys talk about planting the seed. Honestly, man, I think the education of racism starts at home. We gotta be able to teach our kids, what's right and what's wrong, and it's okay to be around other kids of color. Even if we're black in a predominantly white neighborhood, it's okay to have white friends, and then on the other side of it, you should have your white family and white parents teaching your kids, look, it's okay to have black friends. It's okay. But honestly, I think to bridge the gap, in order to bridge the gap, it's going to start at home. And that's where I think that's where, my opinion, I think that's where, the bridging, it's going to start from there. And that's where planting the seed is going to come. That's my opinion of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with that. Because if I think about me and like how I was raised, right? When I had a white friend, and the crazy part about, if we're gonna bridge the gap, the perspective is they treated me well. I'm gonna be honest, they treated me well. It was just that family and the way they were, they was just good people. And so I was in the middle of the hood where violence and crime and all these things and all this stuff was going on, but I had one good Caucasian friend, and their family accepted me as family, and I grew up like that. And then it switched literally once I grew up and I stayed in that same neighborhood. I started to adapt to the environment. So if something was off, so say if when we talk about racism, it's deeper than just white and black, because sometimes, if we be honest, we look at our own people and be like, no, I can't be around them. Oh man, they coming too? You know what I'm saying? Like, those are real things, and we be honest with that part too. You know what I'm saying? It's not just black and white, but even on today, fellas, if I be straight with you, I've been on edge all day. Like, I was out with my family, and this lady stopped and was staring at my son. And it took everything in me to control myself, because where I'm from, if you looking at me a certain way, I'm a gorilla. I'm a wife. She kind of like, can you stop? Don't do that. But just like you guys were saying, she know better. She know better. She know what's going on. Right. There's no reason why you should be staring at me when I'm out with my family. As a black husband, I'm out with my family. We doing what you doing. Why are you staring at me like that? What's the problem? So I addressed it. I had to be authentic me. I had to be me. And I had to say, hello, what's going on? What's good? She looked at me like she seen a ghost. Yes, you did. I stood my ground. You're not about to just stare at us like we some random people in the store. No, we got rights like you got rights. Keep it moving. And that's that. It just was. I just had to share that authentic moment, because I've been on edge literally all day. Like, I can't wait to rest my mind, because today I seen racism just a little bit more than I did all week. Like, in my own personal bubble, like, I seen it.
What did she say was the reason?
She ain't say nothing. When I say she was just staring, as if soon as we came in, she was staring, and she was staring at my son. And my son is not dark skinned, but he's like light skinned. I got two boys, and they both light skinned, but she was staring as if something was wrong. It was like we shouldn't have been there. And I felt it. And so I felt what I felt. And I had to control myself, though. I had to use intelligence, because I didn't want to make a scene, because if I make a scene, I'm gonna stop everything in the store moving. Literally. With just my voice and my response, saying, hey, come on. Let's go.
Hey,
I
Clarence.
probably would have just went there with her because there's no reason. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, man, I was always taught, man. I was taught by my dad. Ignorance don't deserve a response.
No.
It don't, man. And I get it. You're tired of being looked at. It's been a long day, and you have your children, and you're trying to, how can I say, you're trying to enjoy your day without any interruption. But sometimes ignorance just don't even deserve a response, bro.
Yeah.
Keep it moving, man. Unless they offend you, hit you, hurt you, they expect you to act foolish and ignorant, man. Just keep it moving. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes, sir.
that's a great. Thank you for sharing that, Clarence, because that's what I kind of wanted. And James, you could kind of start it on this one. We go through a lot of changes in a day, and it can be very exhausting. We have to wear a lot of masks.
Right.
There are a lot of hats we got to wear. We got to change. You talked about the code, right?
Yeah.
Is there? Do you find in your conversations that there is a ignorance to understanding that we go through that mental exhaustion?
Yeah, I don't know if an ignorance, but I think there's a curiosity about it. So there's a knowledge, a recognition that thing is real, and
Okay.
they're curious about what is that? Where does that come from? Microaggressions. Oh, okay. And Clarence, again, thank you for sharing that as well, because that happens. That's just an example of one of the many things that happen to us on a daily basis, and largely, ignorance does not deserve a response. But I have had great pride in having a platform like this to be able to kind of throw it in their face. So what do I do? I carry these cards around with me, and when I encounter folks like that, I politely hand them ones, and then they get
Hey,
curious.
Clint, hey,
Uh-oh. What's
James,
up,
pull
Chris?
that. Let me see that. Get that close to the screen. Let me see your card. Let me see your card. Pull it close to the screen. Let me see.
Man, it's the logo, coffee, connection, conversation, and then on the back, the web page, right? So it gives you an opportunity to just think about okay, so why did he just give me this?
Right.
And when things like that happen, and I'm in my sessions, they're teachable moments, right? Those are the things we talk about. And for me, those are things that folks can learn from because they have done the same thing a lot of times. You know what I mean? And so really the teachable moments are getting folks in that moment of self-reflection, maybe, and of course that's not always going to be comfortable, but understanding that not everybody's going to feel like doing that. I don't feel like doing that every day.
Right.
Through this platform, it gives me kind of a venue to say, look, if I don't feel like doing it today, there'll be a session at this time, this place, check it out, and we'll go from there.
And that's awesome because that provides them an opportunity to, when they're ready, to come to the table. Because even with this today, I made it a point to invite my white friends,
right?
Just so so they could hear some of the different perspectives from our side, and hopefully, when somebody's ready, if hopefully somebody's on listening, but I made it a point to do that. So I think that's a part of our responsibility is to be our authentic selves, but also be willing to, when we have the opportunity, have the conversation.
Yeah. And again, that's why I really feel that this platform is for everyone, right? Because for you, when you don't want to have the conversation, it's easy to just funnel them to content that is already online for Coffee with the Black, where we've had these conversations, and it may be an encounter or something for them. As we talk a little bit more about the future vision for this, it's really a business, and it's scalable for that, right? And so the ultimate vision would be one day to have a Coffee with the Black Guy app, and those conversations are happening, but to have a Coffee with the Black Guy app, whereas folks like yourselves would be able to go on the app, register, get certified like an Uber driver, and you'd be able to facilitate these conversations, and where it's not predatory or enslaved mentality, right? We're not doing this for free. We're not turning our pain into your gain. It's going to be an equal playing field, right? And so, that's why a lot of times, like this grassroots movement, selling mugs, you know, that's also part of the conversation. When people have that mug and they're doing that, you know, drinking their coffee as their aunt and uncle are staying over for the night, it's going to start a conversation. What's that about? Right? That's all intentional. And it's a platform to kind of, you know, help bear the weight of some folks, you know, some of our folks who don't want to have the conversations, who are tired and who don't have to have the conversations anymore. Right? No one should feel obligated to be an educator of folks who grown behind folks that should know what you know, empathy and compassion is, right? We shouldn't have to do this. My business model is flawed because ultimately the goal is to end racism and put myself out of business. But the reality of it is, I know that won't happen.
Right.
Now, my question to y'all is, since we're using this platform, okay, to talk about this conversation, what resources can we use to help bridge the gap to make it to where, you know, you have, you know, Caucasians, you got Hispanics, Asians. What can we use? What resources can we provide to bridge the gap to basically try to help this situation? I ask you, Chris, what do you think we can do?
And first and foremost, there's got to be a conversation wrapped around different panels. There should be live and in-personal case studies, things that are happening, like what happened to Clarence. Like, there should be case studies that are brought to the attention of our community that should be talked about. And you should have everybody at the table: white, black, Hispanic, rich, poor, gay, straight, educated, or illiterate. Everyone should be at the table having a conversation from their perspective. Now, here it is. The things that you will talk about will be directly affecting what's going on presently. Even the lack of curriculum. Like, it's not a very diverse curriculum where we live. Like, as you guys know, it's not a very diverse curriculum. So having conversations like that with those in the, you know, in the school system, those that might be in the district, having those people at the table. And then, of course, I always say, you know, we always call it like lunch and learns, and we have things like that can bring people to the table and having conversations, but use it on someone else's dime. Find somebody else's budget that you can tap into and say, hey, let's bring them to the table and have a conversation about this. And it should happen more than once. It shouldn't happen when there's a crisis. I always say, unfortunately, crisis draws your biggest crowd. So now that we have a crowd, we have a crisis, but we have a crowd. And so I think that we need to have everybody at the table, Brandon and Rob and James and Clarence. Everybody should be at the table having this real conversation, but not with things that have happened and plagued us eons and years ago. But I'm talking about stuff that's happening right now personally, because at the end of the day, if it's affecting us right now, we have a conversation about, like you said, the boycotting and the blackout. And now here we have, so we can have all this conversation all day long. But the biggest thing is we don't get out to vote. If we want to see change and our political front and the White House or whatever, we have to get out and vote. But before we get out and vote, we must know the issue. So we must educate ourselves on what's plaguing our society, what's killing us. You know, I always say this, and I'm almost right. I always say men and women lie, numbers don't. I'm almost positive that we are the biggest. African Americans are probably the biggest. We buy more than anybody. I think personally. I gotta get the numbers, but I'm almost positive that our numbers, as far as what we purchase and what we own, or not own, but what we purchase,
buying power.
Yeah,
we do. Come on, James, man. We do that, and we give them more power when we have the resources here.
Yeah.
And to have a voice, and like you said, if they don't want to have that dialogue, we'll have a dialogue within ourselves, within our own community. But we must be educated about the issues, and we must bring people to the table that can speak on all fronts, that can speak to the case study, whatever it might be, like what Clarence was dealing with over at the store, to bring that up. We had somebody bring up somebody just going through a neighborhood, and you know how you grab inside those boxes to see if you want to look at a house. A guy that we knew was called by the cops. The cops were called on them because they were in the neighborhood observing a house they want to purchase. So conversations like that, Brandon, must be brought up, and having the people in the room. Uncomfortable, like I said, but definitely necessary before you get that needle to be moved at all.
But what that I think helps do is it helps the newbie, it helps the newbie understand a little bit about this whole myth of the angry black man, right? They
Yes,
get
sir.
to understand, like, well, damn, if that's what they're going through every day, I get it.
Right.
I get it. And then it also gives us a better way to process that, because we feel heard, right? And you know, there is a movement of getting black men to, you know, and black folks in general to, you know, look at therapy and other things of that nature more frequently. But to be able to share our story and actually feel heard
Right.
is a therapy within itself.
Absolutely.
That's powerful.
And if I could just add, because Brandon had a good question about resources, and you know, in addition to the conversations, Chris, I would say, you know, books. There's you know, a lot of books that folks can read that kind of give you a primer before you have the conversation, or you can
Yeah.
have conversations around the books. How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. That's a great book, right? We have the mayor of Santa Barbara recommending that in her statement on the Black Lives Matter. Read this book as a city, right? You've got a lot of podcasts or different content that's out there that folks can get themselves exposed to in addition to these conversations, right?
Yeah.
In addition to voting, and I'm working in the political realm, you know, let me just say something unpopular. Your individual vote does not count. We don't care about you as an individual. That's a fallacy. And it's one that we shouldn't necessarily buy into. But what does count is a voting block, right? Voting block. So if we all are here thinking a similar way, and then we decide, okay, well, we're all going to cast our ballots and do that at once, that's a voting block. And that's not an individual act. And that's having more accountability to folks. And so, you know, I see, you know, post COVID-19, as we're going into a lot of states, particularly California and other states, going into mail ballots, or if you have the opportunity to have mail-in ballots, that is a great opportunity, right? Because what you can do is at the Sunday cookout after church, you can make sure that you make an announcement the previous weekend and say, everybody bring your ballots with you to church. And then after church, you sit down around the table and have conversations about these issues as a community, fill these things out, and then turn your ballots in. That's not illegal.
Understanding. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we need to be creative in thinking of ways like that to empower ourselves and allow other people to feel empowered in doing that work in our communities as well. And then the final thing I'll throw on there for sauce is you know, you invest in what you care in, right? So put your money where your mouth is. You know, there's a lot of Black businesses out there. Don't just think that you're going to go to your black friends and have these conversations and that's going to be enough. No, invest in a D&I trainer like Chris, right? Invest in somebody who is going to have the credentialing and the experience and the expertise to be able to bring that professional skill set to you. That is a professional skill set. And right now, what I think the discord in America is a lot of folks are coming to the realization that they are lacking professional skill sets necessary to be successful in the coming economy. And that is cultural competency.
Yeah, yeah. You know, something Brandon said, and I'm sorry, Rob, I think was you about to say something, Rob?
Yeah, go ahead.
It was something Brandon said earlier. I don't know if it was Brandon or Clarence. I think it was Brandon. I think while going to the ballot and while having these conversations is very necessary, because I think everybody that I know on this call tonight, I know Brandon and Clarence and Rob, I know we have children, not just children, we have young men.
Yeah.
I think these conversations, going to the ballots, your sons and your daughters need to be present to, like you said, put your money where your mouth is and don't just have lip service, but actually going out. And I'll be honest with you. This is, you know, I don't know, I might get beat up about this tonight. Not even boycott, but go out here and have a conversation. And when I knew that it was dangerous for me health-wise, and my children health-wise, I would have loved to go out there and actually had a sign in my hand and screaming Black Lives Matter. Man, if it wasn't for COVID-19, I think those places in LA and Atlanta and Chicago and New York and Philadelphia would have been jam-packed. Washington, DC would have been jam-packed. But I think for me, because I would love to have went out. You know, we from Ohio, so when LeBron James won the championship, it was over 3 million people in Cleveland. And Rob, he was there as well. And if we can do that over a championship game, I know we definitely can get out there and have our voice heard.
Yep.
At those rallies. And again, I think it would have been a whole lot more. It wasn't for COVID-19. And that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But that was my biggest thing. And I wish I could just, went ahead and put the mask on and went out there.
No, but you all definitely hit on, kind of some of the ideas I have, Brandon, to answer your questions, solutions to bridge the gap. I think the biggest part of it is us understanding our value first. And then when you understand your value, now you're able to bring a bargaining chip to the table. You know what I mean? And nobody's gonna listen to you ultimately if you don't have any skin in the game. So at the end of the day, we have to move collectively. We have to understand our power as, okay, we have influence with our dollars. We have influence with our votes. Okay. We say, even in the community, guess what? We're all going to stick together on this vote. We're going to go for whoever has the best agenda that is going to, help our folks and others. But we need to be a part of the agenda. We need to be part of the agenda. So now when we move like that, I think that's how the gap gets bridged, because now, okay, and I think a lot of the real talk, we're not taken serious a lot of times because we don't have that leverage. We don't have that economic savvy to say, you know what, let's pull all of our resources together and own something. And then be able to bring that to the table and say, you know what, we're going to take support away from this. We're going to take support away from that. If you all do not change these things.
Right. Yeah, that's powerful. It's powerful. I think just like what you guys are saying, just to piggyback off of, like you said, bringing things to the table, or just understanding like the demographic or where you are, understanding that there are levels to different conversations, and understanding like you can't go into big a certain platform talking crazy. If you're going to talk crazy, you got to be super intelligent, on point, sniper mindset, and can't be all over the place. And so like all day I've been saying there's levels to this. There's levels to it, you know what I'm saying? So like learning more about what's going on or what's been going on, because this is nothing new. Now it's like I would say the pipe busted. And now the pressure, it's pressure. We witnessed something that we should never have saw, but we seen it because it was time for that thing to be uncovered. This been going on. And all of a sudden, so you telling us we've been sitting in the house, encaged. Think about it, Matt, perspective, not just Black people, but everybody, but people that's used to doing things and moving, and that's how they make their money. That's how, and everything stopped.
Right.
And then you saying we coming out of this, and now we had to witness someone die, and they just seem like they got a slap on the wrist. Oh no, so it's levels to everything that's going on. And like you guys are saying, just like how we do, if we was to actually like get material and get things where we can educate the youth, because 9 times out of 10 we never have the time. We're so busy, and we're leaving the youth behind, And I think I always say it because I work with young people. I work with young people, and I tell them, I say, y'all matter, man. Like if we can bring 80% of the community that's been attacked by police for this being Black, for just having baggy sweatpants on, just for having a hat to the side, just walking in the store. Maybe they were so depressed or so just in the community and they had no money. They mama, all these things matter. Just if we can bring their voice and their idea and what they saw and their perspective and actually educate them and have them speak on a platform where we actually give them material, make sure that they're ready for it, and speak from a pure place. And I believe that'll unlock something too, and there's levels to it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Man, I so agree with that whole idea that there's levels to
Real
this.
quick. You said there's levels to it, right, Clarence?
Yeah.
You said there's levels, and I'm sorry, my phone, thing went in and out. But it's funny how you have your kids on PlayStation over here. Everybody's killing my internet connection, so please forgive me there. But Clarence, you said something that was very heavy. You said there's levels to it, and you're absolutely right. And what I mean by that is sometimes our mind frame, when we hear it's time to get up and vote, we think it's more so on a national level when it should be on a local level. Like it should be local and national. But sometimes when we think of voting, we think of taking it all the way to the White House. When there's issues and there's things that are plaguing you in your backyard, but you don't go out and even vote for that. Like there's some people in your backyard that should not be in office. Your cousin just got put in prison for the modern day slavery, something that somebody else did and got probably a slap on the wrist, but this person got 10 to 15. So we had to start not only do the actual voting on a national level, but also a local level. And like you said, don't go in there and be ignorant. Go in there and know the issue. Go in there and know who's actually on the ballot, who's actually trying to sit and be a part of something. So you really want to make sure that you have your vote and your voice heard on a national level, but also locally as well. And so at the end of the day, that's all true. And I love what you said, Clarence. It's definitely levels to it for sure.
Yep. Hey, I want to give a second, please, for those that are watching us. You got any questions? Send them in real quick. We're going to wrap this up in a little bit, but I want to get a couple more questions in for James. You kind of lead us off, and this one's going to be a controversial one. What's your take on all lives matter in relation to Black Lives Matter?
No, it's not controversial at all. Until Black lives truly matter, all lives matter is nothing more than a fallacy. Simple as that. All lives matter is nothing more than a fallacy. But it's the same lie that ignorant folks have been telling themselves since the beginning, right? All these things that they've justified to kind of keep us down. It's that, and that's kind of the thought process, is that this whole idea of supremacy, this idea of there's nothing specific about you, what makes you better or different than me, that was really a moment of when when Clarence was talking about that, we're sitting there seeing this, something we should have never seen, and I'm seeing this officer sit there with his knee smugly on this gentleman's neck, and knowing what that's doing, all I can think of is like the history of why that, like, why have such hatred toward us? Right. And the only thing I can come up with is the fact that we are excellent, right? And the fact that if you look at throughout history, and this is what I want to talk about as far as ethnic studies courses, right? When you're talking about all politics is local, that's the phrasing that we've used in journalism, Chris. All politics is local. And now, having worked behind the veil more or less in state politics for the past 10 years, absolutely, all politics is absolutely local, right? So does your local school board, what do they do? How do they feel about an ethnic studies curriculum, right? That's a blueprint. You know what? If you're mad about things and you don't know what to do, put together a campaign and go protest for ethnic studies curriculum in your school, because what that's going to do is that's going to open their minds up. No, Thomas Edison did not discover the light bulb, right?
Yes,
the real
sir.
story behind it, like, and that's the story that we need to hear in order to be able to nestle into our greatness. Kids need to know who Mansa Musa is. Absolutely. Greater than Bill Gates, greater than Jeff Bezos, right?
Yeah.
They need to know that there's people like us that are
because imagery is everything.
Imagery is everything. We look at these great civilizations of Greeks and Romans and all that stuff, and then look at where they got that from, where they stole that process and thought process from. That's the stuff that we need to be making sure that our society as a whole needs to hear. And that is exactly what they've been getting shortchanged on, right? I felt shortchanged when I'm learning these things and I never learned them in school. Now they're grown and feel like they know everything. And all of a sudden they're being told that I Have a Dream speech was not written by Martin Luther King. What?
Wow. Confusing.
They can change the narrative. They can change the narrative so quickly. And it is our job, our responsibility to make sure that the honesty and the the validity of everything is put out there. And when I hear that, it's so disturbing, man, James, what you just said. Like to take that, I think about even the speech that our First Lady Michelle Obama gave, and how it was crafted. And I ain't gonna go political tonight, but it was crafted in somebody else's speech. And good job, great speech. And I'm like, but you heard it 2 years before. And so, like you said, we need to shine the flashlight on things that are really, they're trying to push away from what we should know in the basics, the basics. I don't mean to get political, but I haven't said any names tonight, but you're absolutely right, James, with that for sure.
Well, and look, I don't think we should shy away from getting political, because that there is part of the design, right? Everything is political. I hate politics, and I can go back to an article that I wrote when I was a newspaper, early journalist in Marion, Indiana, talking about politics when broken down into its etymology means multiple blood-sucking insects. I don't understand the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. It means to me like wearing jeans or khakis. But I
Can you say that again, please? Can you say that again?
Well, I couldn't tell the difference between Democrats and Republicans. To me, it's the difference of whether you're wearing jeans or khakis, right? And I didn't really realize at the time that really is kind of true, right? The Republicans do tend to wear khakis, and the blue collar workers or the union, laborers are more traditionally, supposedly, the Democrats. But our trepidation from leaning into politics has been our downfall, right? We need to know these systems. We need to have personal relationships with the people who we're giving our vote to, right? They have personal relationships with the other folks. They need to have personal relationships with us, right? And make sure that we're being vocal about what our needs are, individually and as a community.
Man, it's good.
That's powerful.
It is.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. That's
go ahead.
Oh no, I was about to say, just when y'all was talking about Creed, I was actually talking to someone else about trying to put something together for young people, because we keep talking about young people a little bit, about educating them on Black history, because that's not in the schools, and I see it, and I work hand in hand with youth. They didn't took that out, and they skated around the very fact that America was built on the back of Black folk. Their creativity, their inspiration, their thought process. A lot of things that we see today, it came from the culture. It came from us. And you know what I'm saying? They try to take the culture away. And that's crazy to me, because I actually had to dive in a little bit, because my wife is big on it. And I'm like, hold up, man. Wait a minute. Let me dig my feet into what I need to understand. And so I've been looking at some stuff like codes and things to that nature, like having the right, you gotta talk a certain way actually to get in certain rooms. And then now what I see on the TV is they're not talking that the all together speech. You actually get to see people speak from that hurt. You see it now, like that code. They get in the room, they talk that good talk. When they get in the room, they're so authentic, and it's so needed for them to be who they are, their true self, and all they can do is stop and listen. So like getting our youth to know what they need to know is so important. And I think, if I'm in the school system, I think one way to bridge the gap on my level is to actually put something together, put something together and actually present it and say, this is needed. This is needed. So
good, man. Good stuff, Clarence.
I totally agree with you on that, man. It's like Clarence was saying, man. I remember every year we watched what's the movie with Denzel Washington?
The Roots.
No, not The Roots. No, the movie Denzel Washington, man, where he played where they had got with Morgan Freeman, and they had the militia where they got all
Glory.
Black militia.
Glory.
There you go, Glory. We watch that every single year. You know what I'm saying? And they don't do that no more. You know what I'm saying? They don't do it to where these kids is actually seeing visually what we went through 300 or 400 years ago. These kids don't understand it. My sons don't even understand it. You know what I'm saying? And I hate the fact that they actually they, like you said, they stripped that curriculum out of the schools altogether, and it's discouraging because and that's probably the reason why a lot of these kids grow up and they're getting the same thing from home. They're getting, this the viewpoint of, if you're not this color, then you don't matter. A lot of that comes from home, and it doesn't help that you're not getting that in school. You know what I mean? So I think if they start to strengthen the curriculum with African American studies, let's talk about, Thurgood Marshall. Let's talk about all of the predominantly Black influences that we knew. Our kids need to know it too. So yeah, I definitely agree with y'all. The curriculum needs to strengthen up with African American studies, definitely.
And I'll lay out the blueprint. What you do is those meetings, school board meetings are public. Yeah. I used to cover them. You go to that meeting, you get, find out a comment card, and you get on the comment, and you go every week and you make a comment about why we need to have a focus on ethnic studies curriculum. And you get more and more people to do that as well. Once you do that, then eventually the board chair will put that on the agenda for discussion, an item for discussion. Then, I mean, that's like, there is a process to that. And we need to be thinking strategically and surgical about this, because that's how they've been with the oppression and things of that nature. And so, yeah, you definitely have to know that system, and it can be intimidating, right? This whole thing about, and I understand, Chris, and again, teachable moment here, but what you expressed, I see all the time. People, politics, I don't want to get political, but because it's messy, and you feel like, well, if I don't say the right thing, or I probably don't know all the things I need to know, cut that out. The way I explain it when I go to schools and classes to explain to kids what I do for a living, as far as, working on the backside of politics, you understand double Dutch, right? Right. So double Dutch, the ropes are going like this, and I can explain to you, and I can tell you, okay, what you need to do is you need to watch those ropes and time it and catch that rhythm. And as soon as you get that rhythm, you need to be able to jump. And when you jump in, then you got to make sure that you're on rhythm and jumping and jumping and jumping, right? And I can tell you that all I want to, but you're not going to get it until you actually try and jump in yourself. That's how I explain politics. Yeah, it is not as intimidating as it looks. You need to just get in, lean in, and you will learn along the process.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I think a lot of it too, man. That's where, and we don't. I think that's the education piece where I think we miss out on a lot because we don't want to be bothered with it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's where a lot of things go down.
Right.
The businesses that come into your community, the schooling, the education. I mean, there's a lot of things that go down because, people are involved in the politics.
Right.
So those are great points.
Something Clarence and Rob, you all said it, and I love that analogy that you used, James, with the double Dutch. I'm definitely going to use that.
Yours, brother.
If it's okay, I might have to pay for it, but it was something that, I think, like you said, Clarence, you said, like, don't go in there acting all hot head and being ignorant about it. If you want to be careful with your conversation, having good dialogue, make sure that you have your own personal agenda with your own bullet points to guide your own conversation. So no one can throw you off topic, because while you're up there at the podium, you got your bullet sitting there to guide you so you can hit everything. Because the last thing you want to do is walk away from that podium. You finally have you have that platform, and you don't want to say, dang, I should have said this, I should have said that, but you hit every point. So when you do go into that meeting, school board or whatever, even if it's a commission, a plan, wherever it might be, make sure that you have bullet points to guide your conversation so you won't be off topic. Because sometimes people ain't stuck on feelings, man. You got to take your emotions out of things sometimes. And I get, for us, we talk with emotion. Like, hey, you see the head moving, we talk with the hands. But at the end of the day, when you want to code switch and be heard, I think what keeps you away from that, for me, and I always have bullet points to guide me. Now, brothers, I know y'all can chime in on that too, but if you really want to be heard, instead of, like you said, Clarence, losing your cool, having some bullet points to really push your own agenda for a particular meeting.
Awesome.
I'll just give you a tip. When I'm working for the elected officials and they're giving speeches, Yeah, staff prepares those bullet points for them to utilize. So what you said, Chris, is absolutely on point. Utilize what they utilize.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the education piece we need to take away from this. I mean, that's key. That's key.
Yeah.
So we're
Having
gonna
a plan. Okay.
we're gonna wrap it up here with one last question. And we've kind of hit on it already. You know, some things we can do in the community. But what are some things we can do as business owners, you feel? What are some things we could do at work, on the job, to help drive change during this this ripe period? Do you feel, James? What are some things you usually suggest to people?
You know what? I think we started the conversation with it, like just being your authentic self, showing up every day. If you show up and you know, for instance, here's a great example. During the shooting at the Charleston church, that morning I woke up. I didn't feel like going to work. I didn't feel like talking to nobody. You know who the first call was from? The senator who I work for. It wasn't about where are you, James? Why aren't you in the office? It was, how are you doing? How are you processing, right? And so being yourself and understanding that these things affect us. Let folks know that, right? Let folks know that, you know, when you see these things, you know, it's a traumatic event every time a school shooting or some sort of mass shooting happens, because I'm a survivor of one, right? And so I'm always thinking through that time. And when I'm hearing issues of these different you know, the real life stories on the ground, you know, that takes you back to a time that you remember. That happens every single time that there's a Black body that is brutalized on TV for mass consumption, right? That takes its toll on us. That is more impactful than the generational trauma that we've alluded to earlier. And so, you know, I think being your authentic self and showing up every day is key for moving and taking advantage of this teachable moment that we have right now. Short of that, I think, you know, businesses, again, invest with your dollars, support Black-owned businesses.
That's it.
That may take a little extra work. Do your research. There's a website called WeBuyBlack.com. You go there and it's as easy as Amazon. Figure it out and find ways to support Black businesses and Black-owned establishments, and making sure that you, as you're advocating, and so say you're on the Rotary Club or whatever else you're a part of, making sure that those organizations are aware of what our agenda is as well. We should not elect the new president of the United States without that individual having an agenda for the Black community. Back in February, before COVID hit here in Santa Barbara has it has 1.6% Black population, 1.6. Yet we had a debate for the local candidates for the supervisor race about what is their plan for the Black community, right? Put it on their radar.
That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah, that's real good. That's nice.
WeBuyBlack.com. Thanks, Rob.
WeBuyBlack.com.
Man, some nuggets,
Hey,
man. Some nuggets.
Hey, I just want to say, well, let me give an opportunity to give everybody a second to give their final comments. Brandon, we'll start with you.
First off, I love this forum. I love that we're getting together. We actually, you know, talking about this. This is a good thing. And I'm gonna tell y'all my perspective, because I'm law enforcement. I work in the jail. I'm a counselor. I deal with inmates all day, every day. And my thing is man, I see it all day, every day. I see, you know, I see it. I see the numbers. The numbers don't lie. Numbers never lie, you know. And what we can do in the Black community, man, is like you said, we need to start having more forums, you know, going to the inner cities to where you have the police come in there and actually talk to the community, go into the projects, go there and talk to them, you know, rather than you go there and harass them. You know what I mean? Make it more, you know, how can I say it? Make it more of a connection. You know what I'm saying? That's where I think this, you know, this bridge is going to, you know, start to mend a little more. I think we need to make more connection with the inner city and the community. That's just my take.
That's good. That's good.
Yes, sir. I agree. I agree. I agree. I definitely agree. Just what you said about like going into the inner city, or like going in and having like create something where all generations can come and sit and have conversation. And then if we bring our own money to the table, we can actually get some baggage. Like I think if we create something for generations to come, like, you know, those who live in the projects understand the projects. If you don't live in the projects, you might not understand the projects. But if you get one person that has a voice in the projects, because there's always that one, and you get them to come, you go into where it's gangs, you got that one person that might be an OG in the hood, which means got a voice, and we can bring them, and we look like we're not gonna be cutting up today, but I need your intelligence. I need your intelligence, man. You matter, bro. Like I need you. You got clout. Like the way they talk. And the reason I'm saying that is because I lived in the inner city. You know what I'm saying? I get it. So if you don't live in the inner city, you won't understand it. So we get people from all over. I'm talking about those who are wealthy, those who are middle class, and we bring all of us together, man, and we put our own money on the table, and we have healthy dialogue. I think that also bridge the gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
You said, I think, I love what James said about putting your money where your mouth is, and Clarence, you just alluded to that right there. And my brother, his name is Donnell Mitchell. I'm going to do a shout out to him. Man, I was falling asleep. He lives in Tulsa, and I was falling asleep, and he kept putting there, man, Chris, we need to come together with all of our Black businesses, man, and be like Dubai, man, get on our own island. And I'm thinking like, man, I can barely afford to go here, there, and the other. You want me to buy an island? But he's right. We have that type of mindset that we can do that. We can do that. And but on a more serious note, what my takeaway from this is, it's a beginning of a conversation that we need to have. It needs to be consistent and continual. I think leadership accountability is everything from the top down. It starts with our, you know, our administrators, our governors, the president, the vice president. It's a trickle down effect, and I think leadership accountability is big. And when we hold them to it, don't forget, George Floyd, the guy that killed him, was gonna get I think it was a level 3, or what's it called? Manslaughter. What is it?
Third degree murder.
Third degree.
Third degree murder. But the voices was heard that we put them to the fire and said, nah, doc, nah. Because what we did, because I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna tell you the truth. What I did, because I'm not into all, law. I went and looked up what third degree is, and I said, when I found out the definition of it, I said, nah. That's not gonna work. And so educating ourselves so we can hold those accountable that know right from wrong. What they do, they try to put over you. Sometimes they think you have the lack
He was on a roll
of education, and they try to read a. And it don't take a person to go get a master's and a PhD to be educated. I don't know who told y'all that.
Wow.
Like my man James said, pick up a book, man. Pick up a book, educate yourself.
No, Chris, you just said something beautiful. You said they said third degree murder. So you used your natural curiosity and went and researched it yourself instead of looking at a meme on some social media platform that somebody just put together.
Exactly.
Right.
And have you all over the place.
Right.
Hey, I even have my girl. What was Hey Siri? What does that mean? If you don't want to go look it up right now, we got Hey Google.
Girl Siri.
Hey Google. Hey Siri. Like you can, if you just lazy, you don't want to grab a laptop. You can just talk to your house, man. Educate yourself, man. Inform yourself, because knowledge is power. I saw somebody put that on there. I think it was Tavia. She said, "Knowledge is power, man." Like you. Man, I ain't going on the Bible, but the Bible says, man, we perish because we lack knowledge.
That's it.
Knowledge. And if you really want to hold people accountable for things they're doing and they know it's wrong, because I was always taught, man, 2 + 2 is 4. It's not 3 and it's not 5. So if I know it's 4, let me go ahead and do my own research. Like, hold on, bro, it ain't 5 and it ain't 2. It's 4.
Right.
So educate ourselves, but definitely hold our leaders accountable. Our leadership having accountable for the things, for sure.
Yep. And I'll be real quick now. I'll let James give your final say. What I got from everything we're talking about: be authentic. You know, this is a time for you to be you. You have you have permission. You know, not saying that you need it, but some of us need it because we have that fear on us that we can't be. You know, and that comes inherently. Don't get me wrong, but be authentic. Show up, you know, and educate yourself. Get engaged wherever you can. Get engaged. Find a place. Find a spot that you can get plugged into something to where you can act and help make change. And I think that's how we're going to really get everybody galvanized to stay on top of this and really help make change. And it's going to get done with everybody. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's time for our community to really tighten up the house, and then we can go out and really help make change everywhere else.
And James, before you say something, James, I want to say real quick, I promise to be quick, something you said right there, Rob. You was talking about just the accountability and everything, but it was something that I heard on the news on CNN. It was being, the whole idea of the protest was being deflected on rioting. And so what those our young sisters and brothers, white brothers and white sisters and everybody, what we did, we held ourselves accountable. Like, hold on, man. And this riot is taking well, is hold each other accountable as well.
Yeah.
So if you see, James is seeing me do something, or Clarence, you seeing me do something, like, hey man, that's not helping our society. Holding each other accountable, man, is another thing. And I'm done for sure.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, when I see you doing something good, I want people to know that as well, right? So I think that the coin goes both ways on that. And I'm going to try to summarize some of the stuff that you said, because you all hit on some very important things here. And Brandon talking about the beginning. So the idea of coffee with a black guy came from, I didn't create it on my own. It came from an initiative called Coffee with a Cop. And when Coffee with a Cop started, basically that started in 2011 in Hawthorne, California. They wanted the idea of, I don't want to be judged by the badge and or the uniform. I'm a real person. And so what you were talking about, Brandon, is about really getting in the community, being one with the communities that they're policing, and really you initiating the contact with law enforcement, as opposed to the problems that we see are when they initiate the contact, right? And so when I had moved into the town of Yakima up in Washington, I sought out the law enforcement to introduce myself, and just so happened that the officers that I introduced myself to on the street was the chief of police, right? And so there's nothing wrong with having a relationship with law enforcement. We should have relationships with law enforcement. These things happen because we don't have relationships with law enforcement. And so, I would definitely encourage connecting on your terms. Something that helped me, and it was during a board training that I'm on the National Board of Student African American Brotherhood, which actually just moved its headquarters from Toledo to Springfield, Missouri, just this week. But on that board, we went through a board training, and it was about finding out what our essence was as an individual and a leader. And basically, what mine boiled down to, and I think that's something that a lot of folks can go from, is I am my story. I am my story. Own your story. Your life, your experiences, they're you. You are the only person who can be uniquely you. You cannot be LeBron James, you cannot be Michael Jackson, and you cannot be Prince. You can be you, right? And so, you can take things and emulate things from other folks, like the work ethic of a Michael Jordan or something like that. However, you got to incorporate how that's going to work for you. And so really getting comfortable in your own skin and leaning into that, right? Where we are as a nation now, I'm not really surprised, yet I'm surprised. We've been telling America what our condition is for years, right? And we need to look no further than the hip hop industry and what that has done for culture, how that is now pop culture. All you got to do is listen to the lyrics, and you can hear what our struggles, what our pains are. So it should not be a surprise to anyone right now. What did Nas say? Whose world is it? The world is yours, right? That's the mentality we need to instill in our youth. That's the stuff that our education system needs to be instilling in our youth, instead of this rote memorization and checking the box and testing. The only way that's going to happen is if we as a community stand up and demand it. It's right there, the system and the blueprint. And so in addition to just having these conversations, I'm involved in a lot of stuff on the background. And so it's like, you know, in addition to having the conversations with Coffee with the Black Guy, I'm making policy suggestions. I understand that a lot of the problems that we're seeing is connected with the police unions. They're being very quiet. And I understand what position they play in the political game, right? I also understand, because I played football, and I know what roid rage looks like when you see it. A lot of this, what we're seeing with these law enforcement officers, is that we need to talk about that issue. Are they getting drug tested after these instances? Why is that not part of the public conversation? Have they tested for steroids and things of that nature? And so making sure that you're involved in other things, in your jobs, in your community organizations, that kind of stuff is vital, and just kind of owning and leaning into where you are. And final, I'll wrap up here with kind of what our blueprint is moving forward, and it was kind of summarized excellently by the president of the NAACP out here in Ventura. It's this whole idea of the blueprint moving forward is build community, get involved, and make meaningful relationships, right? For us, we do that. We build community, we need to get involved, and we need to build meaningful relationships with people that don't just look like us, right? So they know who we are and what our essence is. And so, you know, that's my final recommendation. And the only thing I'll add on the top of that is a cherry, is if you can, a quick plug for the website. Again, if you don't want to have these conversations with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, direct them my way. Coffee with the Black Guy, CWABG.com, CWABG.com. Again, you know, it's a grassroots movement. We've got a team working behind keeping the web page up, keeping a lot of, you know, of course, this stuff costs, and doing these events and things cost. There's free things you can do. You can share, you can like, you can follow. All of those things are free, and all of those things are vital to making this movement more of what it is, and making sure that as we find out information about Black excellence, that we're sharing that information out there as well with our networks. In addition to being able to buy mugs, there's this we're setting up sponsorship opportunities for corporations and others who would like to, you know, support the work of Coffee with the Black Guy as we scale up. And then, of course, always, in addition to you know, engaging the conversations yourself, we're available for bookings and hostings, right, in your community when we're able to travel again. The whole face-to-face thing is key, and it works a lot better when an organization in a community, the organization that's rooted in the community, says, you know what, we're going to have the internal conversation to host an external conversation called Coffee with the Black Guy. When they're having those conversations, a lot of learning is happening, right? And so encouraging your community and civic organizations and you know, of course, it seems like a shameless plug. That's what I'm doing, and that's what we've been doing for the past 4 years. But there's other folks that are also do this work. There's other folks that have been doing this work. Seek those out if you don't like my style. That's fine with me as well. But we need to have the conversations. We need to engage. We need to build community. And these meaningful relationships are really the only way I kind of see that as happening. So thank you all for having me on this. And I think this is dope what y'all are doing, man. It's just basically like, these are the conversations that we would have been having anyway if we all got on a call, but exposing it so other folks can see it, learn from it, pick up some gems and jewels. I think that's a great thing that y'all are doing. And you know, kudos to you for that, and let's continue.
Awesome. We appreciate you, sir. They can find you on Facebook, Instagram.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of that. YouTube, follow, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's a lot of content on the YouTube channel from previous conversations that I've had, mostly last year, some things that I've done this year virtually. You know, we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. If you don't have a budget and can't bring me out, there's free content online. Watch that. Have a hosting party, but just make sure that you tag me and you know, do the hashtag CWABG so we understand that these things are happening and can see that this is a movement in other communities. People are having conversations.
Most definitely.
Hey, Rob, one last shout out, man.
Go ahead.
WeBuyBlack.com. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
WeBuyBlack.com. I've been looking on the website. There it is, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey,
Yes,
well,
sir.
and we appreciate you, man. Much love. Thanks for taking the time. We know you're out on the West Coast and got that big time difference, but thanks for taking the time to sit down and have a conversation with us. We know you've done some awesome things in the community, and you've been doing some great work over the years, man. And thank you for everything. My mug is on the way, actually.
Good, good. Well, Rob, I don't look at it as my work. I look at it as our work. All the work I'm doing, all the conversations that I'm having, like you've poured into this, right? The conversations that we had about the Live in 95 crew and all the things, you know what I'm saying? Like those kind of developmental conversations and connections are important. And that's what this is all about.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah, Live in 95 got a shout out.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Well, again, thanks everybody for hopping on. This has been another part of the ManUp series. We're gonna see you next week, same time, same back channel, Thursday, 9:00, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Peace.
Thanks, man. Good one. Thanks again, James.
Peace.
Thanks, James. I appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it, my friend.